Warning. This video is very dark. It may be the darkest video I've ever made. So please, keep that in mind if you decide to listen to it. If not, you can just skip to the closing. The time will be noted in the description. Number 1. Discovery. Yeah, I know this story may seem like I'm ripping off Stephen King and his awesome book, but I'm not. These places exist, and I know that they're supposed to be resting places, but they're still dark and freaky. My best friend Matt and I were the types who really just stayed away from other people, and we only hung out with each other. We were those sort of outsiders who thought everyone else was stupid, and we pretty much used that as a reason to do everything on our own. One of our favorite things to do was to break into abandoned properties and explore them. There were plenty of things like that in our area. Our town used to be prosperous, but it died down, and lots of buildings were closed, and many people moved away. There was a wooded area behind an old factory that had been abandoned for years. Hell, it was abandoned before I was born. But the building still stood there, crumbling into pieces. We'd explored it several times, but we never went into the wooded area behind the factory. It had a large fence, and the top of the fence had that razor wire stuff on it, and so we were really too nervous to try to get over it. I mean, who really wants to get messed up like that? But honestly, it wasn't too hard to figure out. We brought some bolt cutters and cut out a hole in the bottom of the fence. Once we did that, we were able to get down and crawl under the fence. I unfortunately did not make it that great, and as I slid under the fence, a barb caught my shirt. It easily cut through my shirt and made a bit of a cut into my flesh. It hurt like hell, and I knew I would have to ask my parents to take me to get a tetanus shot, but at the time I didn't care. Matt got through the fence with no problem. The forest was thick. There was a lot of brush and no real path to go through it, and we didn't even know where we were going. We just walked into it, kicking the brush out of our way when we went. It was pretty difficult. You know, I can't really explain it. The forest was creepy, and it was so quiet. I mean, it almost seemed like it was too quiet. We expected to hear frogs and bugs making noise, but there was nothing. It was just quiet and weird, and we constantly felt like someone was watching us. However, even the strangeness of it did not keep us from exploring. When we finally came upon a clearing, we were shocked at what we saw. And we actually came upon a cemetery. And Matt was ecstatic finding something like this. Finding something old. In fact, when we looked closer at the gravestones, we realized that we had found an actual pet cemetery. And it was old. The dates were in the 60s and early 70s. I didn't find a single gravestone older than that. If I thought the forest was creepy, it was nothing compared to the cemetery. I mean, I thought a pet cemetery was a place where you bury your pets because you love them and wanted to honor and remember them. And that wasn't the impression that we got from this strange and disturbing place. If you have a weak constitution about animals, you may not want to read past this sentence. This wasn't a pet cemetery that someone made to honor their lost pets. This was a cemetery that was made to bury the pets that someone killed. In fact, looking at the graves, I saw some terrible, terrible things. The graves were numbered, and they were not names of animals. They said, "First dog I killed. Second cat I killed." Things like that. I mean, it was bizarre. The graves were wood, and the words were carved into them in black. It was definitely the trophy room of an extremely sick and disgusting individual. Matt wanted to stay there and see if he could figure anything out about it. I couldn't do this. I mean, I can't tell you how disturbed I was. I kept telling him that we needed to get the hell out of there. And finally I convinced him to do it. We probably should have told the police about it. I don't know. This was about 3 years ago, and the graves were over 40 years old. So we figured whoever did it eventually stopped. Matt always wanted me to go back. I refused, though. I can't even tell you how sick that place made me. Hell, it makes me sick even writing about it now. I'm sorry if I upset anyone. Number 2. The Return. I don't believe in the supernatural. I never have. I still don't. I also don't like it when people take ideas from fictional books and then believe that the things contained within are actually real. Like the Da Vinci Code. It was just a book, and people thought it was real. And just like that, people believe that pet cemeteries can bring animals back to life. I mean, I guess people might not actually believe it, but they still associate the idea with those cemeteries. I only ever had one pet in the beginning, an albino ferret. And God, I love that ferret. When I got him, he was just the cutest and smallest thing. As time went on, though, he got big. I named him Frosty the Snow Ferret. And he was awesome. He would jump up onto my bed at night and snuggle up against my leg. If I ever got mad at him, he would run across the room, turn around and scream at me, stomp his little ferret feet, and hide under the fridge. I loved him so much. But if you own ferrets, you have to accept that you will get heartache. They have very short lifespans, and they can tend to get health problems. Frosty had a long life for a ferret. He lived over 8 years. But by then, he was weak and ailing and in pain. I couldn't stand it. I think he lost the will to live, and he passed away in my lap. Frosty was like a family member to me. I couldn't cremate him. I just couldn't. I owned about 6 acres of property, so I decided that I would bury my buddy and give him a gravestone. I actually bought a stone and buried him in a beautiful box. Strangely, I didn't even cry, though. I was sad, but the only thing I thought about the entire time was the good times I had with that wonderful animal. And for about a week, I went to the grave every day. I kneeled there and said goodbye to my friend. But after a week, I knew I had to move on with my life. So I stopped going to the grave. But it wasn't easy. And it wasn't just me. My brother had 2 little girls who loved Frosty too. They came and wanted to say goodbye to him. Annie was 11 years old at the time, and she couldn't accept that Frosty had passed away, and she wanted to spend some time at the grave by herself, and we let her. And before she left, she told me that Frosty would come back. I tried telling her that he was gone, and she said, "He'll be back." After they left, I decided to go out to Frosty's grave. There was a little doll made out of some cloth and sticks, and it looked like it was supposed to be a ferret. And for some reason I didn't understand at the time, there were 2 Mounds candy bars laying on a plate. I figured Annie was young, and maybe she believed in magic or voodoo or something. I've read since that Papa Elegba, a voodoo spirit, likes offerings of coconut candy, so I didn't know that at the time, but I still left it there. So the following morning, I went out on the porch to check on the weather. It looked like it was going to be a really nice day. As I sat down on my porch chair to relax, I heard a loud squeaking sound coming from behind me. I turned, and there was an albino ferret under my chair. Hell, I jumped out of the chair and then out of my skin. I mean, for a moment there, I honestly believed that Frosty had come back to life. I moved back away from the ferret and looked at it. It was an albino, like Frosty. But Frosty was a chubby ferret, and this ferret was really skinny. I went to the ferret and he let me pick him up. He immediately nipped me pretty hard, and I dropped him on the ground by accident. He ran across the porch, turned back, and made a screaming noise, just like Frosty used to. I sat there and wondered. I wondered if I should go and dig up the grave and see if Frosty was still there. But I knew it was impossible. I did go to the grave, and I saw it was not disturbed. But even so, I really thought that ferret was my Frosty. Anyway, I caught the ferret and took him to the vet. I got him all his shots, and I named him Frosty too. I know it's really just a weird coincidence. It has to be a coincidence. Number 3. Missy. This story is not for the faint of heart. I've told it several times before, but it's really a psychologically disturbing story. When I was 18 years old, I still lived at home. My sister had a calico cat named Missy. I wasn't really much of a cat person at the time, but Missy was alright, I guess. She was also an inside and outside cat. When she wanted to go out, she would go to the door, and she would show up later and come in. Pretty much out of nowhere, Missy got really sick. I mean, really sick. She was in pain, and she only got worse. She couldn't stand up, actually. She would lean against the wall to hold her body up and drag herself across the floor. We were all upset, and we took Missy to the hospital. The diagnosis was feline leukemia. This led her to have a twisted stomach. I forget what the medical term was. The doctor fixed her up the best that he could, but he let us know it wouldn't be permanent. It wasn't. Missy was good for a few days, but she soon got worse than she ever was before. In fact, she was pretty much already gone. If you talked to her, her eyes glazed over, and you can tell there was nothing there. Occasionally, she'd snap back to herself for a few moments, but it didn't last long. So she was in pain and suffering, so my parents decided to put her to sleep. I held her in my arms and kissed her. And we weren't friends, but I would miss her. But no one deserved to go through that pain. My parents took some ether, went to the basement and put her to sleep. They wanted to do it themselves because it was a personal thing. But that was the biggest mistake because they didn't realize what it would do to them. She struggled against the ether, and they almost stopped. But the poor cat was suffering, and they knew they had to do it. And she passed away. They put her in a box and buried her under a tree in the backyard. Then the real nightmare began. My mom, stepdad, and my sister really lost their minds after that. I had made my peace with the cat. They were scared. They had nightmares every night. They dreamed that Missy crawled out of her grave and killed them in revenge for killing her. They slept poorly. No one talked to each other. They even began having waking nightmares. My mom one day called my stepdad at work, and he had a real waking nightmare. He hallucinated that the cat had come out of the grave and was coming to kill my family for revenge, and my mom was calling him to tell him the cat was attacking her. He had a panic attack at work because of this. Hell, I don't remember what the call was even about, but I saw my family falling apart before my eyes. I did the only thing I could think of to do. I bought us a new pet. We couldn't do a cat at the time, it was too hard. So I bought a $1,500 Cocker Spaniel for my family. And things got better, really quick. It took us a week to name her though, and I had a really weird experience when we were thinking of a name. I recalled a female pro wrestler I had heard of named Misty Blue. About 10 seconds after I thought of it, my mom suddenly said, "Wow, a weird name just popped in my head, Misty Blue." I don't believe in psychic powers or the supernatural, but you have to admit, that was a freaking weird coincidence. I mean, my mom was not a wrestling fan. Misty Blue was somebody I read about in a book. So how that name popped into her head was very, very odd. But the dog got named Peaches. And she was great. But every time she went into the backyard, she would run right over to where Missy was buried. She wouldn't dig, but she'd remain there, and we had to pull her away. And it started again. Peaches acted like a cat. I mean, she climbed on the furniture and jumped like a cat. It was odd. And my family actually began believing that Peaches was possessed by the spirit of Missy. For a while, they were frightened that Missy would be coming back for revenge. What my parents did for Missy was not cruel. It was mercy. I think about the pain that kitty was going through, and it was better for her. She was in agony. But even a mercy killing is a killing, and the effect it had was more terrifying than I can convey. Fortunately, they got over it. I'm so happy for it. And we have cats again. We have a beautiful orange cat named Ichigo, and he is the mascot for a pretty awesome horror narration channel. They are only inside cats though, because I never want my kitties to go through what Missy went through. Hey y'all, Killer Orange Cat here. I know several people will not like this video. It's probably the darkest video I've ever done. Hell, I'm pretty sure it'll get limited ads too. I know I have a lot of animal lovers who won't like this video, and I'm sorry about that, I really am. You might wonder why I do videos like this, and I will explain. People have stories, and stories need to be told. When you tell those stories, you can exercise negative feelings, and you can get over past pain. I think everyone deserves to have their stories told, and that's why I tell ones that might be hard for us to hear. And yes, I was the narrator in the last story, and that happened to my family. I hope my fellow pet lovers understand. If you'd like to browse my sister's merchandise store, please take a look at the link in the description. It's all Killer Orange Cat merchandise, but please keep in mind, I promote the store as a service for her. I don't profit from the store, so I don't want anyone to think I'm one of those narrators who begs for money. I'm just trying to help my sister out. All the profit goes to her and the cats. In the meantime, if you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please consider hitting the subscribe button below, or use the icon of Ichigo that will appear at the end of this closing. Feel free to leave some comments to let me know what you think of the video, and consider sharing it with someone you think might enjoy it. You can always follow me and Ichigo on Facebook and Twitter. If you have a story you'd like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please email it to the address included in the description. My only requirement is that the story is original, meaning it has not been read on any other YouTube channel. Please, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.